Hello and welcome to the Daktronics Experience Podcast. I'm Justin Oxner here with Matt Anderson, and today we're talking to Ty and Jim. We're going to talk about the military market, the applications we have, and a bunch of other good stuff from that. But first, let's throw it over to Ty. Can you give us a quick background of your role with Daktronics?
Certainly. I've been with Daktronics 17 years, 18 years, somewhere in there. My role at Daktronics is on the sales side of things. I do AV channel business development and then Fed Gov strategic sales for us.
All right. What did you do, Ty, before you were at Daktronics? I mean, 17 years is quite a bit, but
Yeah, I had 8 years with a competitor, different manufacturer. Obviously, it was Yesco Electronics, and left them in 07 and came to DAC. Yesco Electronics, if you haven't heard since, like in 2013, 2015, roughly, they sold that portion of their business out to Samsung. So been in the direct view world for 26 years, direct view LED world. So.
All right, and then we'll throw it over to you, Jim. You've been on the podcast maybe a handful of times. I know you've been on here before, but maybe if no one has listened to those, Jim, could you give us an introduction of yourself and how you got to where you're at?
Thanks, Matt. It's always a pleasure to work with you guys, and I cherish every opportunity to get a chance to join you on these podcasts. Yeah, I've been with Daktronics about 33 years. I've had a chance to work in our sports groups and reseller channels with sign companies and spectacular groups, and now and leading our effort to develop a sales partner channel with AV integrators, and a big part of that is the federal Gov Military sector.
All right. I think that's what we're going to dig into a little bit more, is that we have solutions for that. You mentioned direct view, Ty. What do we have that we're actively using in that military government market for products?
Currently or actively, we have our chip on board technology. So from 0.7 up to 2.5, which we just brought the 2.5 on board. So basically 0.7, 0.9, 1.2, 1.5, 1.8, and 2.5, all chip on board. As you know, past, we had different technologies. Obviously, we had IMD and SMD technology. They've kind of been the leaders for the last 10, 15 years or so. And just recently, within the last year, 2 years, chip on board has made its footprint in the industry, and neat product with how it's designed and manufactured. It just opens up so many more possibilities for the technology and for the industry. So.
Yeah, and really quick clarification, you mentioned a whole bunch of 0.7, 0.9. We're talking millimeters between the pixels right there. So that's very, very tight pixel spacing to get a nice, crisp, clear picture. So you mentioned some chip on board technology. That's what we're kind of pushing into that marketplace. What does that give for the advantages of displays?
Well, as we talk about chip on board, really it's the next movement in the evolution of indoor high-res products. We've got a little visual here that shows just how the industry has evolved from what they call a surface mount diode, where you actually had a element or an LED element that's got its own red, green, blue that's mounted directly onto the circuit board, but it's all exposed. Been around the longest. You've seen it used in outdoor and indoor high coarser pixel pitches above 2.5. And then it also then moved into another option or iteration of that, was what they called an integrated matrix device, or the industry knows it as a quad pixel, where you actually would have one square that's broken into quarters, and each quarter has its own red, green, blue. A little more expensive, didn't have quite the brightness levels that surface mount did, but it had a little more robustness as it was attached to the circuit board. It had more contact points. Both products have been very good and have served the industry well. One of the challenges has been, though, because these LEDs are so small. I mean, you think of them, some of them are slightly bigger than the end of your number 2 lead pencil. And so they're mounted right against the edge of the circuit board, and it's very easy to have LED damage if you handle it roughly, set it down on a table or something that causes the LEDs to come in contact with a hard surface. You can damage LEDs. Chip on board really brings a lot of benefits to it because it's an improved LED. The surface mount diodes, as this visual shows, we actually had wires coming off of those, and that's how it's mounted to the circuit board. Our chip on board is a flip chip. The LED is inverted, mounted directly onto the circuit board. There's no wire connections, so you get better viewing angles, better uninterrupted visuals. You also get operational benefits because the wire that came off of the surface mount was one of the failure points, so we've eliminated that failure point. But the other big thing is the encapsulant that goes over the chip on board. And one of the things that a lot of folks think of this encapsulant, they see the benefit of it is the protection, which is a key aspect of chip on board, right? Even though the LEDs are mounted right at the edge of the circuit board, you don't have damage, so you don't have repair and return. Installations go quicker, you spend less time on site. But the encapsulant is also a key part of image quality. And Daktronics has been making coatings, coverings, and encapsulants for over 40 years. We've learned a lot of lessons and figured out a lot of ways to build an encapsulant. So we've also spent a lot of time putting ideas into how to make better contrast. So when you look up at our displays, even when in the off state, they're very dark. They have a rich, pure black finish. And that makes images pop off the screen when you light it up and show content. Another benefit is how we've our unique design to encapsulant. We've got layers of film in the encapsulant that allow light to pass one way. So when you get light shining on the face of the display, whether it's ambient light through a window, or maybe you have recessed lighting in a ceiling and it's shining right on the face of the display, when that light hits the face of the display, it doesn't reflect back and get glare or reduce or wash the images. It just kind of, the surface just really kind of eats it up and consumes the light, and the display pops through the light and the images just jump off the surface. So our chip on board technology gives a higher level of reliability. The flip chip LEDs have much lower failure rate as they age over the life of the equipment. The encapsulant that our unique design to it gives you better contrast, gives you better image quality, more dynamic visuals, and you have a display. When people look at it, they go, wow, that is an amazing image. And so that's really the benefits of our chip on board.
Reduction of heat as well coming off displays is a big one.
Good
You
point.
remove those induction points, those leads, that it eliminates a lot of that heat buildup in displays that you generally would feel in past. Now with COB, you don't have as much of that. So, and with that, you actually have lower power requirements with it. So, yeah, there's just a lot more all around benefits that come with COB. The advancement in the technology itself has gone leaps and bounds, and so it's exciting with this chip on board. And something to throw out there is, I mean, we're all in with our chip on board technology. That's what we lead with. That's our main core product today, and so it's pretty exciting to see this product and how robust it is, and the clarity and the quality and your contrast that you get off these displays.
And if I could add a little bit more to what Ty's covering, another aspect of the display system is how do you mount this? And every company has a little different mounting methodology, and it seems like it would be kind of straightforward. You just hanging panels up on a wall, but because the tolerances between these modules and display elements are so tight, if you get any seams or variation in how the panels are mounted, you get a display that it's got lines. Maybe it doesn't look good. It's interrupted visuals. So one of the things that Daktronics has, as we show here, is we call it our speed frame mounting system. If you're putting a display on a flat wall, we've got aluminum sections of frame that mount right to the studs. They don't need any backer board or plywood. It's got the ability to handle up to a 1/2 inch of variance in the wall flatness. so that it's very easy to do the installation without shims. You don't have to, clamp and force or hold the display panel right up against the frame and then, drill a pilot hole and then put the lag screw in and then vacuum out all the shavings. Our system actually has keyholes that the standoffs on the back of our panels just drop right into. So you go through and put all the panels on the frame. After you install the frame, make sure it's flat and level, put the panels in, then go through and bolt the panels together. So it works a little bit like a floating floor, but you come together with a very flat surface, and it doesn't have seams. You don't have to spend a lot of time going back and doing rework and readjustment to the system to get a display system that's very flat, gives you great viewing angles, gives you uninterrupted images, and you don't have hot spots or dead seams or dark seams in a display system. You don't have to buy our speed frame, but most folks find it a significant benefit because it installs in half the time of other mounting systems. So our display really brings a lot of benefits to the military world. Installs quicker, easier to work with, improved technology with our chip on board. And then, as I think Kyle hit on, we've got some unique things with our display interface that make us very unique and different.
Yeah, and I was even thinking, right, Jim, you're talking about the no seams and everything being accurate, and it's been a while since we did the podcast with robot surgery, I believe it, where they did that, where they talk about, yeah, and we'll get into applications more and more about, where these displays go in regards to military and government, but they're making, it's an understatement to say they're making some pretty big decisions with what they see on the display, so there's a huge importance of not having seams and things being color accurate, right?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, very much so. I think 100% color representation or 100% accuracy on color representation is extremely important in the FedGov setting or DoD setting for sure. I mean, these guys are making decisions based on the content or what they're seeing on the display. So it has to be accurate colors. I mean, if there's, we did kind of a mock-up with a real-time crime center once that they were searching for a gentleman in a city that had a green polo shirt on with a Nike logo, and they were trying to find him, and some of these other processors out there or other manufacturers that are using off the shelf type processors can't hit those color representations, and so that gentleman's shirt could show up blue. Well, when these guys are making critical decisions, mission critical decisions on how they're going to address what they're searching for, what they need to do, it needs to be accurate. So they need to be able to pinpoint that guy with the green shirt with the Nike logo in a city, down on a city corner, right? And that was kind of that in that real-time crime center. It was kind of a test that we ran to show, hey, yeah, ours is true 100% color accurate. Extremely important in the FedGov or military setting. And that those types of displays, you typically see them in the, in watch floors, command rooms, style rooms where they're making a lot of those decisions, briefing rooms even. But you get into different applications like auditoriums where they're presenting, and they want to be able to show exactly the, true colors with the LED display. So very important in this side of in the military setting.
Yeah, and we've been talking about color accuracy and the display itself showing great colors, great images and pictures. Is there something to be said for the FedGov marketplace to know that the back end that's supporting it is secure as well? Is there something on the coding side or the source code side?
So yeah, I mean, that's extremely important. You don't just see that on the processing side. You see that even in components that we choose today. You've heard a lot of us throw out TAA-compliant or BAA-compliant, right? Which is the Trade Act compliant, meaning we're purchasing, components, whether it be chips, what have you, diodes from, trade partners. And they have to follow certain regulations and requirements and do certain things security wise. When you're one of those partners, when they're selling product into the country. And so there's, like I said, they have to follow certain requirements that hit on that security aspect. Well, on the processing side of things, we see the same thing. When with our processors, our DI6000 processor, our display interface is what we also call it. It's basically, it's engineered, designed, manufactured by us. We own the source code. And so that's huge for us. It's also big for the military when you start talking security. A lot of other manufacturers out there, display suppliers out there, they'll use a third party system, and it could be from anywhere that may have a China bus or Asia bus or somewhere else. And a lot of those countries may not be TAA compliant countries. And so, and the reason for that is simply from a security aspect of things. Obviously you don't want it to be able to be hacked. I think there was a report out, what was it, last month? We've heard about the solar panels that were on our grid that had, they call them sniffer chips, right? In the solar panels. So they could actually be tunneled into remote accessed from overseas. So that it's extremely important when it comes to having product that's built here, manufactured here in the US. Obviously, we use global parts. There's certain things that you just cannot manufacture here in the US or that are not manufactured here. And so, we look to those trade partners, those TAA compliant countries for those components to follow those regulations that are set in place by the government. And they're set in place simply for security purposes for the most part.
Yeah. And then Jim, I don't know if you want to kind of dive a little bit into that too. We're talking about this, broker versus manufacturer kind of comparison here. And I know we had, I think it was one of our top podcasts we did with Brett Wendler when he was kind of describing this a while back. So you gotta explain it just as good as Brett did, Jim. But maybe yeah, but maybe just kind of talk about like the supply chain and how that affects it.
That I was referencing there was there's that difference, and there's a perception. I think that just because I tell people I make my own product or I'm a manufacturer, well, it must be so. And we challenge people to go visit their facility and understand exactly what their capabilities are. And when part of that, and that's what you referenced, kind of this broker idea, because there is so much manufacturing that's happening overseas, especially coming out of China, you can develop relationships with companies that can build a display, ship it over to you, or maybe they do most of the work and maybe you're putting a power supply in or doing a little bit of light final assembly at your facility, but then you're claiming it's your product, it's been white labeled for you, and you're trying to sell a system that somebody else manufactured, but it still has the protocol and the Novastar system that's developed in China, and all the source code is written and maintained in China. Ty referenced the chips and the componentry. A lot of that's built overseas, so you can actually have products that are trying to kind of reach out and get an internet connection back to their headquarters to let it know that, hey, I'm fired up and I'm working, and maybe there's some type of service or some updates it's requesting, right? And that's a big problem with when you're talking about highly secure levels in the the FedGov sector. We've heard from more than one officer that if they've got something that sends or receives a signal in their command center, it sure as heck better not be trying to talk to somebody over in China. And we do all this work in South Dakota. We have all of our engineering here. We develop our own source code, as Ty mentioned, with our DI6000. We do our own protocol that the display interface and processing all works together. We're not telling people, oh, we do a little bit of work, or we're a manufacturer. Nah, come on up to Brookings, man. You're going to see all the equipment there. We do all of our calibration in our factory. We do all of our service out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're building all the displays as well as doing the design and development and ongoing support. So yeah, that's a good question, Matt. That there's a lot of perceptions out there, and it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm a manufacturer, but we challenge people to prove it. Ask some questions, understand exactly what work is being done where.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to understanding the overall supply chain in the industry, and where are things really coming from, right? And who's doing what? And I think a lot of the end users or customers look at it and go, "Hey, this is just a really big screen, really big TV. They all come from the same place, right?" And that's not necessarily the case, especially in the LED world, where things are manufactured all over the place currently. But as Jim said, a lot of things are coming from overseas, China, Taiwan, Asia area, and we'll see a lot of these, and I'm using air quotes here, people who say they're a display manufacturer when really they're just either a broker or a reseller of product. And as Jim alluded to, they may be changing something a tiny bit, adding they'll buy a display from a display manufacturer overseas, and they'll buy a processor from a different, manufacturer from a processor company overseas. And then when it gets to the US, they'll couple them together and they'll say, hey, that's, that'll be Trade Act compliant because it's, I'm blanking the word, Jim, the transformation of product, because you have to transform the product in some way. And so, like these color lights of the world and Novastar, these off-the-shelf processors from over in Asia, typically China, they're not TAA compliant. And that's really the brains of a display. That's probably one of the more important portions of the display than any other part of it. Then there's processing companies out there that are TAA compliant, that are from Germany or the UK, Taiwan, that they're out there. But what we're seeing, what we call standard or off the shelf type stuff, that's typically coming from China. And so it's very important to understand that supply chain and where things are actually coming from and who's doing what. And, hey, is the LED panels coming from, or the modules coming from somewhere over in China, but the panels coming from somewhere else, processors coming from somewhere else? That's like Jim said, it kind of depends what supplier broker is doing what, whether they're buying just full product and bringing it into the US, or whether they're bringing in certain parts that are already built into the US and then just packaging it together and saying, here you go. When we have customers that are like, oh, I'm buying it from this manufacturer, we kind of say, okay, have you seen their factory or gone to the factory? Do you know what they're actually doing or what they're selling you? And the cool thing with us, I mean, all of us know, we've all been to the factory, our factory, and we invite people there. It's open door policy. We want them to come see our factory. And then we want them to go see the other suppliers or brokers or manufacturers' factories, because typically they can't show it to that level. And when you get to that level in manufacturing of a display, you control all facets of that supply chain and quality, and on the product or on the components, they got to hit certain, what we set for regulations on our product. It's got to hit those quality points for us, or else we're not using it. And so, I mean, that's extremely important. Once you start talking to the military and Fed Gov about those things, it really opens their eyes, because it's a whole different, world. display just doesn't come from one place, and they're not all the same. And here's the things that we're doing different that benefits the U.S. military, from display longevity, quality, and also from the security side of things.
Yeah, and I want to clarify that we're made in the U.S. using a global parts network. So yes, manufactured in the U.S. using global parts. We've mentioned the supply chain and TAA-compliant components that we're pulling in and things like that. But it's not just the selection of those components, it's also testing those components in the United States, making sure, Ty, you alluded to it, they have to hit our standards, our internal standards as well, because we are doing a very deep level of assembly using those components and not a completed module, so to speak. So there's more that goes into it where we test everything at our lab here in South Dakota as well.
Yeah, I think that's another part that surprises a lot of people when they come to come to see our facilities is, and I think this ties into, as Ty was talking about, understanding how parts perform and our longevity and our ability to provide support. It's because we test all these components to failure. I think as we talk a little bit about how products get made, we used to build product the way the industry still is. And that is, you take paper specs, you work with your suppliers, everybody kind of look at how is it supposed to perform, and you'd build a display, and well, sometimes it worked out pretty well. Other times, maybe, everything didn't perform like it was supposed to, or maybe there was a component that didn't operate like its specifications claimed it would. Problem is that doesn't show up for a few years down the road. So by going through and testing all of our components to failure, we know how they're going to perform. We can predict how they're going to operate, failure rates. We work with suppliers and get long-term contracts so that we understand, we know our supply chain. And that's part of why with the military, we can give you a 10-year parts guarantee. You have to pay extra for it. We're just telling you, yeah, you get spare parts, but if for some reason you need another power supply or you need a new module in year 9, well, we're going to have the ability to provide that to you. You're not going to get left with a display that you can't really get parts for and maximize the longevity.
Yeah, I think it's everyone's mentioned coming up to Brookings, or we do a lot of this in South Dakota. Excuse me. I realize we haven't even set up what we're doing here. We're actually, Justin and I are in Brookings right now on our corporate headquarters building here, kind of going through and showing the uses of this. Like we'll dive into a little bit here, but talking to you both remotely using one of our 1.5 millimeter displays up here on the board too. But it's one of those, yep, come and see them in Brookings. The factory right over there. Like we're really close to it and everything. Right here, but I know down in Sioux Falls, right down the road, right, is a big our repair center. We mentioned parts and things come out of that too, Jim. So we've already talked about the importance of the supply chain so the display goes well, but maybe talk a little bit about, okay, but when things need to get serviced, how that's important, where it's coming from as well.
Yeah, I kind of got a little ahead of you there. We do have our own service center that's Daktronics owned and Daktronics staffed down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so that we're working closely to maintain and support product. We provide spare parts packages so that either our sales partner can do service, or if it's a highly secure military venue, sometimes they do their first line of defense service and then work with our sales partner for a little more in-depth work if need be. But all that service work comes out of Sioux Falls. If there's an issue that maybe can't be resolved through our service center, they're just a phone call away or a few miles away from our manufacturing and engineering facilities, so that we can quickly and easily diagnose problems if they arise, and the customer's not left hanging. Well, maybe you have to, deal with time differences or deal with, an engineering or design firm over in another geography or another part of the world. We've been doing our own service for, 57 years now. So we have a pretty good idea of how to operate a service center, how to provide support, the ability to repair parts, provide them an overnight shipment if need be, how to maintain a spare parts inventory. And so it's a way that, not only you're getting a product that's built and it's going to be supported through facilities here in the U.S. And we have extensive experience how displays are built. We test everything to failure. We know how they're going to perform. If for some reason there's a failure point that's an anomaly, well, we can pull it in and test it and understand what happened. So I think that's some things that really kind of set us apart, allows us to give you that 10-year parts guarantee with our military sector product. And then as part of that, we also maintain image quality and color consistency because we buy LEDs from the same die lot or quarter bin sort. We maintain documentation so we know what LEDs went to what customer. So if for some reason we have to try to match that LED down the road, we have the information to do so. And then we do all of our own calibration at our factory here in South Dakota. So when it comes out to the site, that you put up a solid red background, or as Ty was talking about, you're trying to get a color of some type of soldier or vehicle or building, all of it matches. There's no quiltiness, and the system looks like it's supposed to. You don't have to try to figure out how to do that out in the field. And we spend a lot of time doing backwards compatibility design. So as products age, it's electronics world. And unfortunately, what electronics got built 4 or 5 years ago, you probably can't buy today. So a big part of what we have to do is invest time to make sure that as parts evolve and components change, we're also doing engineering and design to make sure what we have available is backwards compatible to support that customer that's 5 to 7 to 9 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, talking about the binning process is something I know I've heard a lot of times here before at Daktronics. That seems like a fun topic if you want to cover it, Ty, but about how we, make sure, because like you're kind of saying it, Jim, right? An LED is not the same across, but maybe just talk a little bit about binning a little bit.
Yeah, I'll try to put it in layman's terms
Okay.
and not get too geeky on it or techie on it. And this is how I explain it to customers a lot of times. Diodes are a lot like diamond, right? You have your different cuts, clarities, colors, quality, right? And those are all different grades and numbered, right? LED's the same type of process. So you have those different colors, brightness levels, qualities, etc., just like diamonds. And so what happens is when you're sourcing diodes, you're buying from, we call them, bins or lots, right? You want to buy the bulk of them in certain lots, and different lots are different qualities, right? So typically we buy the highest quality that's out there. And then kind of what's left over is for everybody else. And now when you look at our supply chain and we're looking at purchasing those diodes, we're looking at, okay, can this supplier provide this lot for us, this quality, this diode for the next 10 years? Or do they have the quantity that we can purchase, a bulk quantity now, and maybe a bulk quantity later, right? So we're looking at all those things when you start going into diodes. And that also plays into, the longevity of the diode and the quality of the diode. Diodes don't burn out. They dim over time. And are we getting the highest quality that's going to have the slowest, dim rate, right? So we're looking at all those things from an engineering and supply chain aspect when we purchase those diodes. And what that plays into for us is it makes it easier for us down the road to service that customer, whether it, and to calibrate the diodes as well. So even down the road, being able to recalibrate diodes or diodes that are very, very close to that same lot, be able to be calibrated to where the human eye can't pick up the difference. So really, it can get really technical with when you jump into the diode side, calibration, your different lot levels, your different qualities, your different brightnesses. It all plays together as one. And so that's something that we look at religiously at DAC. It's extremely important because it goes into the overall quality of the display and, the quality of the image coming off the display. So hopefully I didn't want to go too deep there.
That was good. That's the first time I've heard the diamond analogy when explaining that. That works really well. I like that.
Yeah, no, and we jumped into a lot of technicalities right away, and we've been talking about product and how it gets here, how we make it using that global parts network, and all the differences and standards and binning, and we've gone into all of that, and we kind of alluded to it. Fed, military, government. Where are these actually being installed? I think we have an infographic of where we've installed some of these applications, and Matt alluded to it as well. We're using an application in a meeting room right now to talk to you guys in our corporate headquarters. So meeting rooms is one application. What are some of these other critical applications that we've been installing for militaries?
Command rooms, watch floors are probably the most popular, and then briefing rooms, auditoriums to where they're speaking to a group of people in auditoriums, or debriefing in auditoriums. We also just see them right down to your conference room, your commander's conference rooms, your basic conference rooms throughout facilities. It just gives so much more. Direct view LED give you so much more capability in those settings, because you're not having to like the old way they were doing it was, stacking a bunch of LCDs together, and then you would have bezels in the middle of it, right, that would block content. So direct view LED eliminates all that. Plus your longevity lasts a lot longer. If you were to replace one of those LEDs or LCDs, it wouldn't match. Yes, they have ability to calibrate those, but if you're 2-3 years old and you're running 24/7, those LCDs aren't going to hold up for very much longer. So it opens that window of replacing with direct view LED, replacing any type of display technology, whether it be projectors or LCD monitors. A really cool project that we did, can't name names, but it was a wargaming center. Had a floor display, 30 by 30 floor display, that was flush with the floor, glass over the top, that the commanders and could walk over the top of it. They set a podium on it or what have you, and they can kind of direct, and there's screens up on the walls around them, and it's really kind of cool to watch. They can actually direct content, move content around from all the displays and standing right on the floor. And so if it's an auditorium or stadium size type seating, everybody can view that content just looking downward instead of having to look up on the wall or at a screen hanging, right? So it just opens up some more possibilities and applications of where they can put displays in facilities. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to use this product, put this product in the DoD setting, and to see how they're using it. They're using them at full capabilities, which is even cooler. Some of the technologies that they're hooking to the front ends of these control systems, all the different feeds that they have running into it, whether it be satellite feeds, other facility feeds. It's just really neat to watch how they're driving these displays and how they're utilizing them to their benefit and to make their job that much easier, and to make the mission that much more successful.
Yeah, and I know we've been in the military niche or market for a little while, so I have some fun facts that I can call. Usually this is what Justin does, but I can do it from the
Get it, Matt.
an infographic, and we'll make sure to put this in the show notes as well, or Dylan put it up over the screen here later on. But since 2019, we have had 121 display orders for the government and military applications, and we've done more than 23,500 square feet of LED throughout government applications since 2020. And then the third one the last one here, was we've done more than 180 direct view LED displays in about 80 plus command centers and military bases throughout the U.S. in just the last 5 years. So it's one of these, we got the COB going on right now, direct view LED and everything. And it's just I don't know. I mean, you've both been here longer than the last 5 years. So he said, "Oh, Jim, like you're 30 plus, I think you said, and Ty, you're around 17." But maybe just when you want to talk about even like that, like how has it grown? Because it's definitely a unique market in the sense of Daktronics, right? From what people may think of where our displays are at. But maybe just kind of talk a little bit about how it's grown and kind of where we're at today.
Well, I think a couple of things that have helped. Because we build the display system with global parts, but we're manufacturing in the United States and we're doing the display and the display interface. We're very transparent about that. And that's not something a lot of our competitors are able to do either because they're manufacturing, somewhere else, or maybe they don't want somebody to be asking those hard questions of exactly what gets built where. It's a story that the federal gov sector or the military has really looked at, and they see great value in it because there is so much concern about security and the information that's being shown on these systems. Really, it's about protecting our soldiers as well as protecting our country. So security is a big important aspect of how systems operate, where equipment comes from, and who builds it. So the fact that we can talk about where product is built, and they can, South Dakota's maybe not always the easiest place to get to, but you can come up and see our facility, and you can actually touch it and see it, and you know what's being built, and you know what you're getting. I think the other part is a lot of what we try to provide is support and be consultative from the sales side, and we want to be help them find the right solution. It's not about selling a display. It's about what's the right solution. How do we help them accomplish and fill their needs? And, Ty and the sales team has done a great job of being a trusted resource. We understand how systems operate, and we can, help them and collaborate with our sales partners, the integrators, to really get the product that has the workflow. It's simple, it's easy to operate, it's reliable, and it shows up on time, and it gets installed and schedule. So I think that's been a big part of it from my perspective.
Yeah, if somebody's watching this and they've heard all this technical details, all these applications, they're interested in potentially getting something from Daktronics. Any advice for them? Is it just call Jim?
It's
and
call
he'll
Jim.
Get you set up, or
Well, I'm not sure that my number's posted out there.
Not yet.
But you can get in to www.daktronics.com. You go to a lot of military events or conferences. There's a good chance you'll see Ty there, so go up and say hello. And but that's a way people can reach out to us and just say, hey, we're interested in seeing how you can help us update or upgrade our system. So yeah, just reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you out.
sounds good. We'll put Jim's contact in the show notes then.
Yeah, you better get a burner phone, Jim. We'll put that one in there.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's what I need, Pat. More phone calls.
we'll make sure they can get a hold of us and get a hold of you and get to the right people involved if they're interested in this. But thank you, Jim and Ty, for coming on today and telling us all about our chip on board product for Fed Gov applications.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, thanks, guys.